I haven't really been taking any medication since my diagnosis in 2010 because I found that I've been able to manage it properly with proper supplementation and also proper lifestyle modifications and diet. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. Welcome back to another Sunday Q&A. Today's question is with regard to my experience with ulcerative colitis while on the carnivore diet. Specifically, am I still taking medications now that I'm on the carnivore diet? But before I start, you guys know the drill. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, ding ding ding. And if you don't want to watch the entire video, I will be including timestamps in the description so you can skip ahead to the section that you want. Now onto the topic at hand. A few weeks ago, I had uploaded a video about my experience with ulcerative colitis and how the carnivore diet had helped me. And on that video, I got a couple questions from Dauren. And Dauren asks, just wanted to mention about a month you were get UC is ulcerative colitis. Is this mystery or many of the same diagnosis get sick by March? I started earlier but eventually broke down in March 2017. And then the second part was, can I ask you a question? What medicine you take? Are you still taking medicine? Well, Dauren, first I would like to answer the first part of your question with regard to, is this some type of mysterious disease? With regard to ulcerative colitis, a lot of people find that when they are under a lot of stress, it does induce symptoms of ulcerative colitis. So if you are experiencing a lot of symptoms, one of the things aside from diet that you can do to try to mitigate some of the symptoms would be to incorporate some stress management techniques. Some things like diaphragmatic breathing, meditation, these are things that I have incorporated into my own routine that I have found to be tremendously useful ever since being diagnosed back in 2010. And as for your second part of your question with regard to what medications I am taking, I have not been on any medications since my diagnosis. I've already shared my story about how exactly I was diagnosed and my journey through the last 10 years, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I am going to quickly recap for those of you that are new to the channel and haven't heard my story yet. Basically, in 2009 was when I first started experiencing symptoms with my ulcerative colitis, and it was just a little bit of blood in the stool, and then it progressed in 2010 where it got really, really bad, and I was getting a lot of blood in the stool and a lot of diarrhea. So that is when I went to go see the gastroenterologist, and that is when I got my initial diagnosis. That was in April of 2010. And in terms of how I felt in April of 2010, when I was first diagnosed, I was basically bedridden for 10 straight days. I was not able to hold down any food whatsoever. Any food that I attempted to eat, I would immediately throw it up, and I ended up losing a lot of weight in those 10 days. I ended up dropping my weight down to 140 pounds, and I hadn't been 140 pounds since I was in grade 9. So at that point, I was skin and bones, and I was very, very unhealthy. And one of the things with regard to my initial diagnosis was when I was first diagnosed, that is when I went on prednisone. Prednisone, I ended up doing a 40 milligram dose, and every 5 days I would decrease it by 5 milligrams. And I found that the prednisone did help when I was first diagnosed with my ulcerative colitis. However, I wanted to try and find a way to mitigate the symptoms without having to be on medication. So that is when I really started paying attention a lot more to my diet and also into other alternative forms of medicine. One of the things that helped me initially was medical marijuana. I remember when I first got diagnosed, again, 10 straight days, was not able to hold anything down. Anything I tried to consume, I would immediately throw it up. And what happened was, by the time the 10th day came, my father, he had a coworker whose mother had a cancer diagnosis, and she had some medical marijuana. So he ended up getting some for me, and I ended up smoking it that night, and I was able to actually consume an entire bag of food without any issue. And not only was it not an issue at all for me, but once I was finished, I was actually still hungry. And that was absolutely amazing for me, because at first, if I had the smallest bite of food, even one little cracker, I would immediately throw it up. So to be able to have an entire bowl of soup, an entire box of crackers, and still be hungry after that was great for me. So that is one thing that helped me tremendously. And in terms of the diet, the very first diet that I ever really started once I got my ulcerative colitis diagnosis was the Paleo diet. And the Paleo diet, it was great at the time for me, and it worked wonders. Shortly after my diagnosis in 2010 is when I started the Paleo diet. And one of the things with regard to the Paleo diet is my symptoms did dissipate quite a bit, but I did still have some residual effects from my diagnosis. And that is why in November, December of 2010, I ended up filing for a medical marijuana card. And that is something that I've been incorporating myself ever since 2010. I found it to be tremendously helpful for me. And aside from that, I was also experimenting with different types of supplements to see what would help me the most. And the The supplements that have been in my rotation since 2010 that pretty much I like to take religiously are HCl or a digestive enzyme, glutamine, probiotics, and vitamin D3. With regard to vitamin D3, I remember back in 2011 was the very first time that I ever did a megadose of vitamin D3, and I ended up doing 50,000 IU twice a week. So it was every Monday and every Thursday I would do 50,000 IU of vitamin D, and I found that that was one of the biggest things to help me with my symptoms. When I was doing the megadose of vitamin D3, my symptoms completely went away. Now, quick side note before I actually get into what exactly I was doing, I'm not saying that you should do a megadose. If you are curious about taking vitamin D3, I would recommend that you go get some blood work done, measure what your levels are. Ideally, 80 to 120 milligrams per deciliter should be your vitamin D level. So if you are below that, then you may want to consider supplementing with vitamin D. But back to the point, I ended up megadosing with vitamin D3 for 6 weeks. It was every Monday and Thursday, 50,000 IU for 6 weeks. And I found that that was really good at helping my symptoms go away. And they went away for about 6 to 9 months, no issues whatsoever. And then slowly they started to creep back. But it never got back to the point where I was experiencing blood in the stool or getting extreme nausea. I would get some mild upset stomach and things of that sort, but overall I was feeling really, really good. And then in January of 2013, that is when I first tried doing the carnivore diet. When I first did it, I ended up doing it for 2 months. So it was January and February of 2013, and it was very spontaneous. It wasn't something that I had planned on doing. Basically what happened was there was a grocery store. It's an all organic grocery store called Nature's Emporium that opened up by my house, and they had a lot of really great stuff. And my funds at the time, I was in between different training jobs, so I didn't have too much to spend. So I decided that the produce that they had was really expensive, and it was between either getting meat or produce. And when I was consuming meat only, I felt really, really good. So I did that for 2 months, and then I built up a solid clientele over the course of those 2 months. And as I started to come into more money, then I started to incorporate a little bit more produce and go back toward the paleo diet. I was also experimenting with the keto diet at the time. However, at the time, I did not even realize what the keto diet was. I was just experimenting with different ratios of protein, fat, and carbohydrates, and I found that whenever I consumed 80+% of my calories from fat, I felt absolutely amazing. And it wasn't until about 2 or 3 years later that I actually discovered what exactly the keto diet was, and that I was doing it without even realizing that I was doing it. And I pretty much continued on with the carnivore, paleo, and keto diet all the way up until January of 2015. And then in January 2015, I wanted to experiment with the vegan diet. It's something that I was always against, but at the same time, I wanted to give it a shot to see maybe it would work for me, and it was absolutely detrimental to my health. I told myself I would do it for 3 months, and I did it for 3 months. The first 2 weeks were absolutely great. My digestion improved, and I was feeling really, really good. And then after those 2 weeks, my health completely deteriorated. I was getting really bad nausea. I was getting really, really bloated all the time. I had diarrhea for 2.5 months straight. So at the end of the 3 months, I decided to go back on carnivore because I remembered how great I felt in January of 2013 when I first did it. So in April of 2015, that was the second time that I ended up doing the carnivore diet to help with my ulcerative colitis. And within 3 days, all of my symptoms went away. I was getting diarrhea every single day for 2.5 months, the last 2.5 months while I was on the vegan diet. And within 3 to 4 days of going back on the carnivore diet, everything went away. I had normal stools, no nausea whatsoever, no bloating. And that was pretty much what sold me on carbohydrates being bad for my specific body. You may be able to get away with it, but for me, I noticed that not only grains, even vegetables. I absolutely love broccoli. Broccoli, ever since I was a kid, was one of my favorite vegetables, and I found that whenever I would consume that, I would get really, really bloated and really, really gassy. So I ended up removing all vegetables pretty much that time around, and from 2015 all the way up until January of 2020, I essentially was doing a combination of paleo, keto, and carnivore pretty much the last 2-3 years between, I would say, 2017 to 2020. January of this year. I ended up doing meat and nuts for breakfast, and then whatever meat I would have for breakfast, I would have that same meat for dinner, and that was pretty much what I ate. In terms of vegetables, I might have consumed vegetables once every week or maybe every couple weeks, but it was not a huge part of my diet over the course of the last 4 years. Anyway, I'm going to fast forward a little bit. Last year in August of 2019, I ended up going for a follow-up colonoscopy, and I was pretty much symptom-free from 2010 all the way up until that follow-up colonoscopy, with the exception exception of that short period where I went vegan and I was getting those really bad symptoms. But when I ended up doing the colonoscopy, it really messed up my gut. And I found that for a good 2 to 3 months, I was getting diarrhea every single day, and I had suspected that I had some issues with my HCl levels in my gut. So I decided to do an HCl protocol, and when I did the HCl protocol, it confirmed what I had suspected. I had managed to get up to 40 capsules in between every single one of my meals before I started noticing this burning sensation in my stomach. Another side note, if you plan on doing something like an HCl protocol, do not do what I did, because I ended up building up that tolerance. I started with 1 capsule and I kept increasing it until I noticed that I had some issues with my stomach. But if you do plan on taking HCl, first of all, speak to somebody who is qualified and that actually knows your medical history. Second of all, you want to start low. You're going to start with 1 capsule if you do start with HCl. But anyway, back to the actual story. So I did the HCl protocol, and within a couple weeks, everything was back to normal. And in January, that is when I decided to try experimenting with vegetarianism. I was going to do 2 days out of my 5 workout days. Basically, days 1, 2, and 4 are my workout days. Days 3 and 5 were my rest days at the time. And on days 3 and 5, I decided to try vegetarian. Days 1, 2, and 4, I decided that I was going to just stick with paleo. So I would do meat and nuts for breakfast and then meat for dinner. And then what I found was those 2 months that I was doing vegetarianism, on my rest days, my symptoms came back and they were getting really bad. I was getting really bloated. I was getting low energy. I was getting really sore from my workouts. I wanted to do it for 3 months just to see how I would feel. And I decided to cut it short 1 month. And that is when I went on the carnivore diet for the 3rd time. This would have been in March of 2020. So this very year. And what I noticed was within a couple days, I felt absolutely phenomenal. My energy levels were great. I had great mental clarity, no issues with GI distress. I had a little bit of issues with loose stool, but that was also a little bit of a feeling out process because I was experimenting with different ratios of my salt intake and also doing a couple other things. But after the first 7 days, no problems whatsoever. And in fact, it went so well that when I went on the carnivore diet this 3rd time, I had only planned on doing it for 3 months. I had started the year saying that every 3 months I wanted to try doing a different thing with my body to see just how I felt, because I like to experiment on myself. And after 3 months of doing carnivore diet, I still felt so great, and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to continue to do this until I find that it's no longer working for me. And so far, it is still working for me. Everything is feeling amazing, so I'm continuing to do it. And that is basically going to be my strategy moving forward. I'm going to just continue to do this until I notice that I don't get any better. But in terms of your initial question with regard to my medications, from 2010, I have been medication free. So I haven't been on any single medication since it would have probably been October or November of 2010. But in that first 6 to 7 month period, I was on prednisone 3 separate times. And I did notice that paleo, keto, and carnivore helped me out the most. In terms of right now, again, I'm not on any medications, but I am taking some supplements. And quick side note, I'm going to be listing off some of supplements that I'm taking and also the dosages that I'm taking. Do not take it just because I'm saying that I'm taking it. The reason that I'm taking these at the dosages that I'm taking is because of a lot of trial and error, and that I found that this is what works for me. So don't do it just because I'm doing it. You should see what works for you. But anyway, back to it. In terms of what I am currently doing, I am taking vitamin D3, a digestive enzyme or HCl, and then I'm also taking probiotics and glutamine. That is pretty much my staples right now. I'm not taking any other supplements whatsoever. I am putting electrolytes in my water, but that's basically it in terms of my supplement protocol. And in terms of my dosages, what I'm doing with the vitamin D3, I am taking 5,000 IU every single day. That is my maintenance dose. And every once in a while, I had mentioned earlier that I do like to do a megadose. With regard to the megadose, the very first 2 times that I did my megadose, it was 50,000 IU twice a week, and it was on Mondays and Thursdays. And I noticed that every time I did that megadose, I would feel really, really good for about 6 to 9 months, and then symptoms would slowly start to come back. The 3rd and 4th time that I did my megadose, I ended up doing 100,000 IU on Mondays and Thursdays. And I found that when I did 100,000 IU, my symptoms completely went away and they never came back. And every 2 years, I just like to go through a megadose. So this last time around, this would have been back in March when I started the carnivore diet again. I ended up doing another megadose. This time, it was not 6 weeks. It was actually a little bit longer, but I ended up doing 150,000 IU, and that was, again, twice a week. I would do it every Monday, every Thursday, basically an entire bottle. The bottle that I was taking, it was from Nanoceutical Solutions, and it was a 30 milliliter bottle. Every milliliter was 5,000 IU, so I would chug an entire bottle first thing in the morning, and I did that for about 7 to 8 weeks, and then after I had finished with my megadose, I just went on a standard dose of 5,000 IU a day. With regard to the vitamin D, one thing that I have been experimenting with for the last 2 months is on the first of every month, I've been doing a Megadose. And the way that I've been doing it is on the first of every month, I will do an entire bottle of the Designs for Health vitamin D3, which is 120,000 IU. And I've just been experimenting with this. There's no real rhyme or reason to why I'm doing it. I've always been somebody that likes to experiment on myself just to see how exactly I react. And I've been feeling absolutely phenomenal the last few months. So I'm just going to keep doing it until I notice that it's no longer effective. I do plan on getting my vitamin D levels checked once again in the next few months just to kind of see where exactly I'm at. But overall, I have found that I felt absolutely amazing ever since doing it this way. And I want to see if by doing it this way now, if I could avoid doing a long-term Megadose where I'm doing twice a week. So that is one of the reasons why I started doing it this way. Again, though, don't do it just because I did it. One of the reasons why I did it initially was because my vitamin D levels were low. If your vitamin D levels are not low, then there's no real reason for you to Megadose. But back to the rest of my supplement protocol. With regard to the other supplements that I'm taking, I'm also taking either HCl or a digestive enzyme. Typically, first thing in the morning, my first meal, I will take a digestive enzyme. I'll take 2 capsules of the ATP Labs digestive enzyme. And then later on at night, so my dinner, I'll take 2 capsules of the Poliquin Group HCl. And the HCl, it is 1,300 milligrams, and it also contains pepsin in it. And I found that with the digestive enzymes and the HCl, it does improve my digestion quite a bit. So that is why I take those 2 supplements. With regard to other supplements that I'm taking, I also take a probiotic. The probiotic that I take a pretty high dose. I take several different strains. I don't like to stick to just one particular strain because your body's going to get used to a little bit. So I do like to take multiple different types of strains. And currently what I'm doing is I'm taking the ATP Labs, the Probio 7, and also the Designs for Health probiotic. The ATP Labs probiotic, it is 2 capsules that I take, and it is 50 billion per capsule. So it's 100 billion of the ATP Labs. And then the Designs for Health, I also take 2 capsules, and they are 100 billion each. So it's 200 billion of the Designs for Health. Overall, it's 300 billion probiotic cultures that I am taking every single day. And I will do that with my breakfast first thing in the morning. Pretty much all of the supplements that I take, it's first thing in the morning, right in between my meal. And the only thing that I take throughout the rest of the day is going to be an HCl supplement with my dinner. And it's 2 capsules, 650 milligrams each capsule. But that's pretty much it in terms of my supplements. And then in terms of what else I'm taking, the only other thing I am taking is glutamine. The glutamine that I'm taking, it is from ATP Labs. It's called Glutamed, and it has 4 grams of glutamine and 1 gram of glycine per serving. And the way that I am taking it right now is I take it 5 to 6 times per day, roughly 3 hours apart. And one of the reasons why I do that is because I started this protocol back in January or February, and I had built up a tolerance to about 40 grams of glutamine per day. And I found that when I went above 40 grams, I was experiencing some loose stool. So I stuck to 40. When I noticed that I was getting loose stool from 40, I dropped it down to 30, and I just continued to do that. And the last few months, this has been my dosage. It's roughly been 20 grams of glutamine because it is 4 grams, roughly 5 doses. Some days I will take 6 depending on how exactly my day works out, but that is basically what I'm doing now in terms of my supplement protocol. So I haven't really been taking any medication since my diagnosis in 2010 because I found that I've been able to manage it properly with proper supplementation and also proper lifestyle modifications and diet. That being said, if you are somebody who is taking medication, do not get off your medication just because I found success without it. Everybody is going to have their own journey that they need to go through and experience it for themselves. So don't get off your medication. If you are on medication right now, you can speak to your gastroenterologist and kind of figure out a plan moving forward to try and get you off of it. But that is just what has worked for me in terms of getting myself into remission. And I'm very, very happy with the results that I've seen over the course of the last 10 years, because if you had told me 10 years ago that I would be where I am right now, I would not have believed you. 10 years ago, I was at the absolute lowest point in my life in terms of my health. And I'm so grateful for everything that I've learned over the last 10 years and all the people that have helped me along my journey. But that's pretty much it for today's video. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to smash that like button so I know to make more of these types of videos in the future. And if you're either new to the channel or haven't subscribed yet, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell, as I will be uploading new videos every single day. That's it for today's video. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you again tomorrow.